silver will double or triple the purchasing power gain that gold will have. It's going to be gold on steroids.
They now have to keep printing or we crash.
We've got this ticking time bomb.
Talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire.
Welcome to Live from the Vault.
Hi there, my name is Shane Moran and I'll be your host for this week's episode of Live from the Vault. And welcome to the show that goes beyond the headlines and uncovers the truth about the precious metals industry and the effects on the global economy in these historic times. With exclusive access to experts and insiders, we reveal information and we reveal insights that you simply won't find anywhere else. Now, this week, we have the one and only Andrew Maguire, precious metals expert and whistleblower in the vault. And to help him pull back the curtain, we'll be joined by a returning guest and by popular demand by you, our Live from the Vault community, precious metals expert Bill Holter. That's right, Bill Holter is in the vault, and you're not going to want to miss a word of this conversation. But just before we go and introduce our featured guest, for those that haven't already heard of Bill, and head over to the UK, just please help us spread the word about this channel by, liking it. If you haven't liked it, hit the like button right now and share this information. Make sure you subscribed if you haven't already done so. These things really help the channel get the word out to more and more people. If you want to be notified in real time as each episode goes live, just click on that bell right there and we'll do just that. Now, for those that haven't heard of Bill Holter, well, he is a precious metals expert, and Bill's really a financial commentator with over 2 decades of experience. He has been a vocal critic of market manipulation, the central bank policies, and the crucial role that physical gold and physical silver have, and what's happening here. And he's also a well-known contributor to the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, and that's GATA. And you can find more about Bill at billholter.com. And with that, let's head over to the UK and talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire and our special guest, Mr. Bill Holter. Over to you, Andy.
Well, Bill, honestly, this is a real privilege. You are one of the most requested guests. And I've been following you for so many years. I mean, goodness me, all the way back when you were working with Jim Forsyth. Goodness me, that's going back a long time. So, but thank you for all the work you do and all the contributions to GATA, Bill Murphy, who lives in your state, your great state. Of Texas, which I love. And in fact, my wife and I were recently looking at if we're going to live anywhere or have a place in the US, it's going to be in Texas. So one day we might actually be a neighbor.
Well, I hope you like the heat. It's going to be 105 today with 114 heat index.
Yeah, but you have air conditioning in your. We don't.
Yeah, as long as the power grid holds up, we do have AC.
Yeah, we talked about that last time, and that is a real concern. I understand that. But Bill, I just wanted to open up because you were a very salient thing, and it was quite radical at the time. You said a few months ago, you were very skeptical that an election would happen in your country. And it seemed amazing to me that you would even be skeptical about that. What's your thoughts here? Because from what we were talking about a minute ago, you're not that certain now.
Right. Back in, I'm going to say it was back in November. So, a good 6-8 months ago, 10 months ago, I went on the record saying I thought there was basically a 50-50 chance that we would have an election. And I outlined that if it looked like the powers that are in place now are not going to be able to cheat enough to steal the election, they would do something. There would be some type of false flag. Something would happen that the election would be either postponed, canceled, or whatever. The events since then, and we're obviously getting much, much closer. We're only a couple months out, 2.5 months out from the election. it just looks, I mean, I've lowered those odds. In my mind, I think there's only a 30, maybe 35% chance that we have an election. You have to understand that if these people that are in power now lose power, they've absolutely weaponized the Department of Justice, and they're terrified that if Trump gets in, he will weaponize, and you really shouldn't call it weaponize. He'll just bring forth the true rule of law, and the things that have been done are completely illegal, and you will see people go to jail. So when you terrify people like that, when you corner an animal, you don't know how they're going to react. I mean, when I say false flag, it could be absolutely anything, including, starting World War III. I mean, who knows? But I think anything and everything will be on the table if they feel that there's no way that they can win the election.
Already we're seeing situations in Ukraine right now, Bill, where the UK government, the new UK government, didn't even hide the fact that the UK was behind that incursion into Russia. And it's almost to the point where they're really trying to start some heavy reaction. Thank goodness that Putin is a pragmatic person, but they clearly, in my view, they're trying to get him to use nuclear weapons because basically, how embarrassing, you've just come in the first time that Russia's been invaded since the Second World War. And you've got British, American, mercenaries, the Black Rocks of your world, these contractors are heading this whole thing. And it's almost as if, we're challenging you to do something where we can really start a war. What do you think?
Well, I think collectively and led by the U.S., the West is the evil Satan. I mean,
yeah.
It's like the roles have been completely reversed. And, take for example, what's going on in Great Britain right now. I mean, if you pray publicly, they arrest you. I read an article today that somebody got jail time because he had a bumper sticker that said, "It's okay to be white." I mean, what in the world are these people thinking about? And yet they let, pedophiles off. They get no jail time. They get to walk scot-free. I mean, what has happened to the world? It used to be that the West was the torchbearer of the rule of law, the torchbearer of morals and what was right and what is wrong. And at this point, it's the West that is, like I said, the evil Satan.
The weaponization of migration, of illegal migration. Let's face it, Bill. Your country has been welcoming of many people over history who have come and contributed, been an asset, been but you've known who they were when they arrived, but the weaponization of open borders, where you are deliberately trying to break the system, which ultimately leads to, well, in this country, they're already talking about martial law. I mean, if my son was going to go to a concert in Birmingham, and his mother said, and these are ex-Marines, and she said, don't go because it's dangerous. These guys are running around the streets with machetes and large knives, and the police. It's fine with the police if they do it in mass, even though the knife laws here are very strict. But the minute that anyone else, even I put a tweet out that says I hate something, somebody there is determining what what is acceptable? Who is it that's determining that? Because I hate oysters, but if I say I hate fat people, I mean, that's my choice to say that.
Right.
But I'd actually probably have the police at the door.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. And I mean, I actually wrote this when I first started writing back in 2007. I wrote that the policies that were being put in place were too stupid to not be the plan. And I mean, it's so obvious now that the policies that are being put in place every single day are an absolute plan, and that plan is to topple the West. And let's kind of shift gears and look at that from the standpoint of markets. And I mean, I know, you testified in front of the CFTC back in 2010, and absolute kudos for that. Markets are 100% manipulated. And the way that they've kept, if you want to call it conservative, God-fearing, law-abiding people under control is that they've kept these markets levitated. So the average person looks at, I don't know what they call them in the UK, but in the US, the retirement accounts are called 401ks.
Yep.
People look at their 401k and their balance is $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever. And their thought process is, well, yeah, all this stuff is going on, but I'm okay because I have my 401k account. I'm doing fine. The value of my house, if I sold that, it'd be a huge windfall. So by manipulating these markets, by keeping these markets levitated, they've kept the conservatives from revolting. And they will absolutely pull the plug on markets. Once they do that, then you will see the law-abiding people get completely pissed, and you will see riots, and you will see, I guess you could say, societal warfare. So it's just understand that the lies, the manipulation, it's not just what we're talking about as far as from a societal level. Part of the plan is to keep these markets up, to keep the peace until they decide that it's time to pull the plug and let the whole thing force the whole thing to come down. And I mean, that brings us to the Great Taking, which, I mean, that is absolutely a plan. If you put those laws on the books, and those laws have been put on the books all over the Western world, where your broker, your bank, your insurance company, if they're failing, they can take what you think are your assets, but they're on your institution's balance sheet. They can take your assets to save their bacon. So it's an absolute plan. And anyone who thinks that the Great Taking is just, it's made up or whatever, that's not even possible. These laws are on the books, and they've been on the books for nearly 10 years. And what that does is when your broker, your bank, or whatever takes your money, you have zero legal recourse.
Yeah. I mean, you've been talking about bail-ins for an age. And if ever there was, and I think this is one of the reasons why that you've been an advocate, telling people, you know what, you really need to take responsibility for yourself. Think about this. Now that you have this information, Bill, now that one has this information that you're telling people, and they realize that, hold on a minute, that money is only in my name on paper, really they should be doing something with that. They should be crystallizing it into something, well, really, gold and silver. Really, that's what we live and breathe. It's the only real money in the world which has zero counterparty risk. And how many times do we need to learn this lesson? It's amazing to me that people, and I look at the mainstream media, and like I watch Bloomberg all the time, and Bloomberg's great for trading, trade information, but there's a hell of a left-leaning organization, and it's constantly, I mean, it's so biased, it's ridiculous. I complain to them all the time about their bias, but I mean, it is really, it's worrying to me. This whole thing is really worrying, and there's a definite slant. And in fact, my son was watching. He was listening to Klaus Schwab the other day, boasting, "Well, I've got no worries anymore. I've got all the things in place. I can retire now. I've got all the people in place that I need to control everything." And now we're witnessing that. We're witnessing exactly what he's talking about. The bureaucrats, for the want of, run everything. In fact, that beggars the question, Bill, who's running your country?
That's a good question, and I don't really know the answer to that. I would just say that, I mean, if you look with this upcoming election, if you look at Kamala Harris's background, I mean, she was one of the first district attorneys that was put into place, backed by George Soros, Schwab, etc. And now she potentially could be president. Getting back to what you were talking about, Jim Sinclair originally coined the phrase "get out of the system." He ran a clearing firm, understood how it works, and back in, I think, 2004, 2005, started telling people, get out of the system. Keep low bank balances, get your stock certificates in hand, pretty much stay away from insurance products, and put your hard-earned savings in gold and silver, not at a bank, not within the banking system. Either hold it yourself or do it through a private non-bank vault, because gold and silver are the only monies, as you mentioned, have no counterparty risk. And really what that means is they can't be inflated, they can't be printed, and they cannot go bankrupt. You cannot wake up tomorrow morning and find out, the company created some product that kills people and now the stock's worth zero. Gold and silver have been money for 5,000 years. They cannot bankrupt. If you get it out of the system, you're out of the system. And we're absolutely headed for central bank digital currencies all over the world. And just for the two of us doing this conversation, we would have our accounts shut off by this afternoon.
Yeah.
So just understand that owning gold and silver creates liberty for you. It creates options, creates choices. It's wealth that cannot be denied to you.
Absolutely, and it is the only, and that enables you to be the person you are. That enables you to not hold yourself back from and having the courage to speak the things that you should speak. And really, this world would collapse into a heap if it wasn't for the people like yourself who stand up there and say, hear me because, or Jim Sinclair, or you have to, if you follow this, if you're just blinkered and you follow the mainstream media, you will know none of this. You will not have a single moment. Yet, on the other hand, if you were to look at what happened in Cyprus, in the bail-ins there, where even if you had your gold in a vault, in the bank vault, if you went to get your gold, there'd be somebody there with you who'd have the other key, and they would confiscate your gold. So, as you say, keep it. If you're going to have physical gold or silver, be sure it's somewhere where it's independent. Your great state repatriated an awful lot of its dollars into their own vault because they didn't trust the Fed system.
Yeah, that actually happened here in the United States back in, 2008, 1933, 1934, when they had the bank closures, people went to their safe deposit boxes and they were emptied. I mean, if you had gold in your safe deposit box, it was gone. If you put gold in a safety deposit box now, you got to be out of your mind because it's going to be taken.
Didn't J.P. Morgan quite some time ago ban people from actually storing, other than a few coins, ban people from storing gold in their safe deposit boxes? Seem to remember that.
I don't know.
It's going back a bit, but I do remember a couple of clients phoning me.
Well, in the state of California, they raided a safety deposit box company and took everything, and then people had to prove that it was theirs. Now the courts reversed that, and the bulk of those assets have been returned to people. But the way they did it was, we're taking it, and you can have it back if you can prove how you got it, because it could be drug money, whatever. I mean, that's completely bogus. You've got to get it out of their reach.
I mean, again, lesson. There's the lesson. There's the lesson. So yes, pick up your piece of gold, your silver, and you know that if it's in your hand, it's got zero counterparty risk. But you make sure that, as you say, that you put it somewhere where as safe, well out of the system, and obviously. You can't. A lot of the time, you couldn't possibly store that at home because it'd be a huge risk of being robbed. But there are plenty of, as you say, there are places where independent vaults, which really would not be raided in the way that you've talked about it, and it would have to be independently audited too.
Well, it's fairly easy to store a large amount of dollars or euros or whatever in gold. I mean, a 400-ounce bar now is $1 million.
Million.
I mean, go back 20 years ago, and you were looking at $100,000. So now it's $1 million. And I mean, to store 2,000, 5,000 ounces on your property, I mean, that's certainly doable. Now, silver is a different story, but yeah, you can hide gold. You can dig holes on your property. Put gold in your basement. Put it in a potted plant. Whatever. You can hide that, because now you're talking about a large currency amount per ounce. And while we're talking about this, I noticed that James Turk was just talking about his gold overvalued. Gold is so undervalued, it's not even funny. People are thinking, oh my gosh, gold's $2,500 an ounce. It's too high. I'm not going to buy it. Well, the only question in my mind is how many zeros get put on the end of that 2,500 before this is all done.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've reached. I mean, I noticed you've been following very, very closely, and been well ahead of the curve on the BRICs. Gold-backed currency, which I think by no coincidence is about to launch on the 22nd of October, ahead of the US election, if it happens, basically. And I know you've been following that, and the effect that is, I think people underestimate the sheer effect of that much gold being utilized as money is going to drive the price of gold. I mean, $3,000 is far too small an amount to actually do that. But Bill, just imagine. It boggles me. But just imagine when this gold becomes 40% back, 60% currencies, but whatever the unit is, and we know that the BIS is behind it too. So basically, if you then price oil, for example, backed in largely gold grams, then what the hell is the price of oil in dollars? Because the Fed is still capping the price of gold to bolster the dollar. So suddenly you're going to have, to me, it's a massively inflationary effect. And if oil suddenly doubled in price, like Prozar talked about it, doubling in price, could triple in price, that would implode the entire too big to fail derivative jumble.
Right. There's two sides to that. Right there, you're talking about the real economy.
Yeah.
And yes, it will absolutely implode the real economy. And I do want to mention, and I talked about this a little over a couple of years ago when we first had an inverted yield curve. Understand that we've had recessions without an inverted yield curve, but every time we've had an inverted yield curve, after it uninverts, we go into recession. And we have now experienced the longest inverted yield curve ever. So uninverting, I mean, this is going to be a disaster, and we're in the process of uninverting now. The 2s and 30s are basically flat. The 210s, they're still inverted. Now, as far as you're talking about the real economy, yeah, there will be instant hyperinflation, and a better way for the average person to think about that is an instant cut. 30%, 50%, who knows, 80, 90% drop in your standard of living. That's the first thing. Now let's look at the financial aspect of it. When the BRICs come out with their currency, what that's going to do is it's basically going to shut the credit spigot off to the United States. And you're basically going to have the Federal Reserve directly monetizing any and all Treasury debt that they need to borrow. And they're borrowing $1 trillion every 3 to 4 months. So, and let's go back a little bit. Isn't it convenient that the Fed and the Treasury were combined a couple years, 3 years back? So now they're in-house. So let's look at it as a pair of pants. It's the right-hand pocket borrowing from the left-hand pocket. So from a financial standpoint, you're going to see that this was entirely a Ponzi scheme from day one. And the model, the best way to describe the model, it's the never pay model. Because all you have to do is create more dollars to make payment. And it doesn't cost you anything to create more dollars. So you're paying with something that's free for you to create. Thus, you never truly settle the trade. With a real currency like the BRICS currency or any currency that's backed by gold or some type of commodity, you're giving a currency that's real for something that is real. And that's the reason the BRICS even started to begin with, is because the world was getting fed up of giving real products for nothing, for pieces of paper or digital, digital amounts of dollars, euros, yen, what have you.
Well, the interesting thing is, this is only 45 market sessions away.
Right.
And people are asleep at the wheel. And of course, what we're already seeing every other central bank, global central bank, including the Bank of International Settlements, and all the Western and global South-facing central banks, everyone but the Fed is accumulating gold in size because they saw the writing on the wall. And it was so interesting because the Bank of International Settlements, on the 1st of January 2023, they obviously revalued gold as a first-year asset class. They were so ahead of the curve. They knew that this was going to happen. And to me, that was the actual divergent point that the Fed split from really what used to be the Bank of International Settlements. I mean, Benoit Gilson, we used to watch his footprints at 2 o'clock every morning, 6 o'clock our time. You'd see a sudden crash and they were gaming the market and they were all in it. They were 500 tons up to 700 tons of swaps, closed them all, every single one of them on the November, 1 month before they revalued gold as a first-year asset class. And yes, the Fed has come in and borrowed, maybe 116 tons or whatever, but it's on the Fed's balance sheet. But the Bank of International Settlements is long gold. So to me, they knew, and when they saw Glasniev's currency being proposed, he proposed one of two. It was the option one was pretty much the kind of option that the BIS is standing behind with their Enbridge unit thing. And he also proposed the commodity, gold-backed commodity currency, which apparently is still on the cards in combination. But 45 days from now, all these central banks, what are we looking at? We're looking at higher and higher and higher and higher lows. Why? Because the central banks are buying. And it's like, these are higher stair steps. And 3,000, my liquidity providers tell me, well, nobody's selling anything. And 3,000 gold is a no-brainer. So
right.
People are asleep at the wheel if they're not watching this.
I would just say if central banks all over the world have been actively hoarding gold, there's a reason for that. And all you have to do is look at what their holdings are. And the average central bank worldwide holds maybe just shy of 60% of the reserves in dollars. And they know that that's going to implode. But if you revalued gold, pick a number to 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, who knows what the number is. But if you revalue gold much, much higher as the dollar implodes, then what happens to their balance sheet? The gold will blow up enough to fill the black hole created by the dollar value evaporating. So really, what they're doing is they're front running what they know is going to happen.
It's interesting. I think the way that this BIS-backed Enbridge unit, which is done in collaboration with, this is the funny part, this is done in collaboration with Glasniev, and it actually runs over. It's so apolitical, it overcomes sanctions. And it's like, this is, to me, I can't believe that this isn't all over Bloomberg and all the press here. This is a biggest sanction buster out there. And it really, as you say, why are the BIS involved in this? Because, as you say, they know what's coming and they want to be on the right side of it. And they wanted to be clear of all their of their derivative bets, and so that they could be long. And of course, and that's what I mean. I think I read something recently that, watch out, Benoit Gilson and the BIS, he'll be smacking gold down. No, he won't. No. He's now acting to be long gold. And it's like,
right.
To me, this is a game changer. It is a completely, the old historical chart patterns that people follow. They're based in a paper market. We've now evolved to a physical market. And the sky is the actual limit here. I don't know what the price is. You don't know what the price is. All we know is it's a hell of a lot higher.
Yeah, if anybody gives you a firm number as to where gold's going, they're full of crap. They're making it up.
Yeah.
You mentioned sanctions and you also mentioned derivatives. First off, let's go back to October last year. The United States said we are going to confiscate $300 billion of Russia's treasuries. That was the low in gold. That was roughly $1,700 an ounce. Now we're just north of $2,500. That is almost a 50% move in the value of gold in less than a year. That's completely unheard of. And that's simply because nations worldwide have said, or have thought to themselves and acted by buying gold, because they're thinking, well, if they could do this to Russia, the most powerful military on the planet, they could do that to us without a problem, without even batting an eye. So that's the reason gold has rallied so strongly from October. You also mentioned derivatives. And I guess with this part, I'm going to ask you a question because I don't really know the answer. 2-3 weeks ago, you saw the Japanese market, based on a 0.15% raise in interest rates, the first raise in 20 years or whatever, that market imploded 25% in 3 days. And I looked at that and I said, well, this has got to be it, because there's got to be margin calls all over the world in all kinds of markets. And I mean, even if you say that the yen carry trade is 20 trillion, which is what the official number is, that's on books. That doesn't include OTC derivatives, which could be 10 times that. Mm. And almost immediately, probably 3 or 4 days after that happened, people are running around saying, oh, well, the carry trade, they've cleaned up 75% of it. That has to be complete. It took over 20, almost 30 years to put that carry trade in place. And you're telling me that in a 3-day period of time, 75% of it was erased and no one died? There was not one death, not one financial death. Something really stinks. I mean, we found out in 2010 that the Federal Reserve had lent 17 trillion all over the world to save the system. We didn't know it at the time, but we found out after the fact. Mm. How much money do you think central banks all over the world put up to keep this thing from imploding and shove it under the rug? I mean, I'm asking you your thoughts on this because I don't see how it's even possible that what happened did not kill multiple companies and create a domino effect.
Well, Bill, I think you've just outlined, you've just nailed it. It's impossible. It's impossible that something didn't get damaged. I mean, obviously, clearly, it's being hidden, and as you say, that carry trade couldn't possibly have been unwound. It's been free. It's been free money for a long, long time, and asset managers haven't had to try to do anything. I mean, you don't really need, your child could actually do that trade. It is so simple. But as in anything, there comes a point where it all falls apart. And I think, again, this is talking about the Fed. Finally, this is probably the Fed's final death knell, because obviously it's been 1913. It's taken, so then you've had all of this free money, and all of a sudden, this thing, because the Fed now snookered themselves into, now they're having to cut rates into what is probably a hyperinflationary environment.
Right.
I mean, what the hell? I mean, this whole thing implodes. And this is why they don't want Trump to come in, because he's talked about completely eliminating the Fed as it currently stands, talking about taking back control of the Treasury. And he's talking, no wonder they try to kill him. No wonder they're trying to kill him. So, yeah, I think in answer, I just say, well, clearly it's nowhere even started to be resolved.
Right. You mentioned the Fed. This is their death knell. Understand that the Fed has a negative net worth now. I mean, the equity that they had, and the last I saw 2 years ago, was they had a $65 billion of equity, and that was holding up trillions and trillions of assets and a couple quadrillion worth of derivatives. Not only do they have a negative net worth, but they also have negative cash flow now. I read a few weeks back that for the last, 3 months or 6 months, their cash flow has actually been negative. So, I mean, how does that work? You have a central bank that, it doesn't matter whether they have reserves or not, but they can create 5, 10, 20, $50 trillion to lend around to keep things going. I mean, this is a complete joke. And also, just one more comment on the yen carry trade. It is absolutely free money. And understand, when somebody gets free money, they're going to do stupid things with it. And that's what they've done.
Absolutely, Bill. It goes hand in hand. I think, so now that you've got gold as a first-tier asset class running alongside US Treasuries, and obviously, so basically, there comes a point where you've got choices now, especially you're Saudi. You don't really, what you used to do is you used to pour all your profits, buy treasuries with all your profits. You get protection from the US military, and that trade's unwound. So now you've got choices to actually put your profits into gold, into first-tier assets of gold, which you can actually use for trading and leverage and all that kind of stuff. There comes a point then, my question is, because you've said, and I know you're right, that the Fed prints or creates $1 trillion of money every 100 days. So is there a point where there's simply a buyer strike, where you'll look at the picture that you're just describing, they must have their eyes open, and then the yen carry trade now unwinding, the whole thing, the Fed on the back foot, are not obviously clearly struggling to even keep their reins tight. So if there was a buyer strike, and I think there has to be a buyer strike, even if it's to a smaller degree, at the margin, surely that's going to drive rates up to mid 15, 20%.
Yeah. As far as a comment on the interest rates, I mean, you have the world's reserve currency issued by the U.S., which is financially and from a judicial standpoint, we are a banana republic. There is at whatever it is, just under 4% on a 10-year treasury. There is absolutely zero risk premium, and that's a problem. I mean, you're locking in a loss is what you're doing. As far as a buyer's strike is concerned, you're already seeing that, and that's the reason that the Federal Reserve has had to step up and buy more and more. And I do want to comment on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, and I was shocked that there was no market ramifications at all when they came out and they said, well, we're going to still accept dollars, but we'll accept many other currencies also. So that really broke the petrodollar. It broke the work that Kissinger did. And part of that deal was that the United States would protect Saudi Arabia. Well, our military is a shambles. We got our asses kicked out of Afghanistan. We left $85 billion of equipment. And publicly, you have generals, you have admirals that are wearing skirts and high heels.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really think China and Russia are scared of the U.S. military? And I mean, just from a factual standpoint, Russia has hypersonic missiles. They've proven they have hypersonic. We don't. I think we've had one test, maybe two tests that were successful. If you can't catch it, you can't kill it. If you can't catch it, you can't stop it from landing in your territory. It's like the U.S. is crippled. We've crippled ourselves. But we've crippled ourselves through military procurement, where they're spending, $1,200 for a hammer. It's all been graft. It's all been stealing as much as you can from the empire before the empire fails.
Well, I think, thank goodness, Putin has been acting pragmatically. As you say, there are probably, if it wasn't being hit, if they had assassinated him, then I think all bets would have been off. I know that there was an assassination attempt at him, and I'm sure There may be others. But if that had succeeded, then I think those hypersonic missiles would have gone. And I heard, I mean, literally, Poland they have no love for Poland at all, given Poland's actions in supplying weapons and being a facilitator. And I heard Medvedev one day saying, well, we take, out of our 5,500 missiles, we take 22, and Poland, the Polish language will no longer exist. I mean,
Right.
I mean, these people are in the background. Putin's holding them back. Putin is actually saying, we're winning. We're winning. We're looking at the long picture. They'll never defeat us. And no, we're not going to be sucked into using tactical nuclear weapons, which is what they're trying to get us to do.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. So that NATO can then come in, and then all of a sudden you've got a war situation where there'll be no elections and all the kind of, it's almost too obvious.
Yeah, I've spoken my thoughts on Vladimir Putin many times, and I've urged people. He's made maybe 7 or 8 public speeches that if you read them or watch them all the way through, translated to English or whatever your language is, if you actually read what the man has said, it's very logical, it's very based, it's very down to earth. I've been trolled and harassed, called a Putin lover. Well, no, I'm not a Putin lover, but I respect level-headedness. And if you can read any of his speeches and point at anything at all that you don't agree with, that doesn't make sense to you, then I don't think you're really thinking right, because he's been based in logic and come right out and said, we want fairness, we want free and fair trade. That's what we want. I mean, he sounds like he's someone from, the 1800s or first half of the 1900s. I don't see anything that you can argue about with what he said. And I would, again, urge people, go back, dig up. And I've posted pretty much every one of his speeches on my website. Just go back and read them and see if you disagree with anything. If you spend, some of them are long, if you spend 45 minutes to an hour and watch the whole thing, I think you'll have a change of heart or a change of your way of thinking, because the man makes sense.
Well, this is what free speech is all about. It is about being open to all ideas, so you can make your own decision as an individual. And I think so obviously finding those speeches, you'd have to go outside of your US. You have to go to Russia. You'd have to go to RT or somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Because you're probably, and if you do download it, and they block me for even getting RT now. I used to appear on Max Kaiser's show at RT. It's like now they've blocked all those channels. I can't even access it without going through a VPN. That is, and it's ludicrous. But I think this whole Ukraine thing, it always, what is this about? To me, it is always follow the money. What this is all about is actually, to me, one and only thing: the threat of Russia and allying with China, the Sino-Russia alliance. They cannot tolerate that because the unipolar hegemonic dollar relies on having a unipolar world. And so you've got, if you can take Russia out, you can't take China out. So if you could take Russia out, force regime change, which obviously isn't working, then basically this is, to me, what they're spending hundreds of thousands of lives over, literally other people's lives, that is. And these poor Ukrainians, they don't even realize that they've been used as just cannon fodder in this process where NATO, which is not a defensive organization, where NATO has kept pushing and pushing and pushing the red lines to try and really create this situation, which somehow, as you say, because Putin has been pragmatic, must have frustrated the hell out of them, because at no point have they succeeded in forcing a regime change. If anything, what they've done is strengthen that. And
Right.
in fact, isn't Putin, I know in this country, he offers people, young people who are working, the guy who's running my cafe said, I was told if I want to come to Russia, they'll give me a house, they'll give me money, they just want me to come and just be a part of the system. I've looked, everything's good. I understand that they're actually offering that to US citizens too.
Yeah, they're offering it. I think the term that they used, to people with good social and moral values from neoliberal states in the West. To respond to what you're talking about, Ukraine was a money laundering operation, plain and simple, bottom line. And as far as taking Russia out, I forget whether it's 14% or 17%. That is their debt to GDP. They are the most fiscally responsible country on the planet.
Bill, you're right. So now you've got potentially, I mean, with absolute dread, I listened to US news, and I've heard comes across Bloomberg, they're very left-leaning, and that you get a lot of, and now you got a lot of Kamala's, she doesn't make speeches. What she does is read a teleprompter.
Stupidity.
And basically, what the hell is she thinking? What in proposing not just 28% corporation taxes, but what's she thinking about? This is mind-boggling. I can't even say it. You're talking about price controls? I mean, how the hell does that work?
Well, the problem with price controls is when it costs more for a company to produce something, to sell it at whatever the price is controlled at, they'll just stop producing. So what you're talking about is, they can tell you that filet mignon is $2.99 a pound, but there isn't any. You can say what the price is all you want, but those products will not come to market, because in a capitalist system, a company's not going to produce something that they lose on every unit. It's communism, and communism has been proven not to work over, hundreds of years.
Well, Bill, you know what? I mean, the only thing I can think is that there's always hope. There's always hope, and I think gold and silver is the only thing you can do really as an individual. You can make those choices today, this minute. They can contact you, Bill. They can buy gold. They can buy silver. It's not a problem. I mean, you can that's it, sorted, done, and you've insulated yourself to whatever degree that you are able to do that.
Well, that's only part of it. That's only part of it. That's the huge part of your financial plan is to get your assets out of the system into gold and silver. With the type of social unrest that I absolutely know is coming to the U.S. and believe is coming to many, many parts in the Western world, I mean, you've got to prepare yourself so that if you pick up the phone and the phone's actually working and you dial 911 emergency, nobody's going to answer. I mean, you're going to have to stand up and protect every facet of your life. When this goes down, there's not going to be grocery stores that have food for you to walk in and, buy tonight's dinner. There's not going to be restaurants. I mean, for a spell, is it 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? I have no idea. But everybody's going to be on their own for a spell. And I would just say, whatever you have on hand is all you're going to have for a spell. And you're not going to have any opportunity whatsoever to change your position. So when the music stops, either you have in place what you need or you don't.
Cutting right to the point. Absolutely. So it's about taking as much responsibility for oneself as one can.
As one should. That's as one should.
Yeah.
Always. Whether bad times are coming or not. One should always take care of themselves and not be self-reliant on other people, your government, whatever. Be self-reliant.
100%. And we have 45 sessions from today before gold becomes a global currency again. 85% of the BRICS countries either produce or consume the products that they're going to trade.
Right.
So why do they need a weaponized dollar? Why do they need it? So 45 days from now, what do people actually, where do they want to position themselves? In dollars or in gold and silver? And I know silver, that I was going to ask you the last question because I know people get fed up after an hour. Silver, you have been such a strong proponent of silver for so long. You see that as one of the most important currencies, or that people can actually afford. Even everyday people can afford silver. So you see silver as obviously, from a physical market perspective, you have always said buy silver.
Yeah, well, I've said that because the ratio now is 85 to 1. It comes out of the ground, call it 9, 10 to 1. That's God's ratio. Man's ratio is 85 to 1. One of them's right and one of them's wrong. And when the curtain gets pulled back, we're going to find out that silver is far more valuable than it is currently portrayed as. And there's been all kinds of monkey business. I mean, you testified in front of the CFTC. There's been monkey business from a financial standpoint, and there's even monkey business on reporting of demand. I mean, they're not even including demand now, for solar. And it looks like solar this year is going to use up, like 500, 600 million ounces? The world only produces 800 or 900 million ounces. So it's been in a deficit for at least 3 years, but those deficits are far, far larger than what's being reported. We're going to find out that silver's way more valuable than it is currently portrayed, and I think it's almost a no-brainer that the ratio is going to come down to 30 or 40, which means silver will double or triple the purchasing power gain that gold will have. It's going to be gold on steroids.
And with silver coins, for example, a very fungible barter instrument should all hell break down. Very, very powerful.
Exactly.
Well, Bill, do you know what? I could go. We've got to have a beer. I tell you what, a lot of beers one day, because honestly, this could be an all-night session. But I want to thank you for joining us and sharing. Really, you're so straightforward, just so to the point. I love it, and really, people should take note and listen to you, Bill, because that's sage advice, and these opinions that you have are well thought through and come from a deep knowledge. But really, thank you for joining us and sharing some of your sage advice with us today.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Thank you, Andrew Maguire and Bill Holter, for another fascinating discussion. And remember, to our Live from the Vault community, buy physical, make sure it's backed 1-to-1, and understand the difference between what Andy calls the casino paper gold and silver markets and the actual physical gold and silver markets. They're not the same. Don't be fooled. And there you have it. That's all we have for you today on another episode of Live from the Vault. Now keep keep spreading the word about this channel. And all you got to do to really help the channel out there is to hit the like button, share this information, and also subscribe if you haven't already done so. Now, if you want to be notified in real time as each episode goes live, just click on that bell right there and you'll be notified in real time. So with that, we'll see you next time right here on Live from the Vault. See you then.